them is high sugar.
Right. It's
and so it's
cheap
actually
processed
depleted.
Stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's depleted nutritionally, and it's causing more and more of their mental problems. It has no B vitamins in it, so it's not helping, their nervous system, and a lot of, other major issues. And so it's easy for them to adopt a drinking. And this is what I tell people. I have friends of mine who be like, don't give that homeless person money. You can't afford it. It's like, you know what? It's like, I have it. I'm just going to give it to them. And they're like, they'll just drink it away. And I'm like, if I was in their condition, please, someone give me bottles of liquor so that I can get the hell out of here as fast as possible.
I know. I'm laughing because you just literally, that's exactly what I do. And I'll be like, they might go buy this or that. I'm like, but, if I was in their situation, I mean, I would probably want to take the edge off. I mean, oh God. I mean, yeah. So I think like you, Bridgette.
Yeah, it's just sometimes, yeah. So there's in Rudolf Steiner's work, and I refer to him a lot because he was a pretty brilliant guy, and his whole thing was, solid nutrition, and he educated, doctors, and he has a quote that's something like, if we continue to eat from unhealthy soil, we will be trapped in the prison, like of our body. And that's true. Like in healthcare, you deal with a lot of people whose bodies are sick, and there's no way that you can reach spiritual enlightenment when you're in so much physical pain, chronic pain for years on end, or mental pain, or whatever your pain is. And so your body does become the prison. And so it's 100% accurate. But in part of one of his branches that might be of real interest to you, Karen, is that the way that they handle, people that have disabilities and other, issues, is in Europe they have these things called cliffside villages. And they are biodynamic farms. They are areas where they have lots of, healthy people that live there, but they also have people that have mental problems. They have people that have disabilities, autism, Down syndrome, lots of type of severity. And these people would normally be housed in, homes and being medicated and all kinds of stuff. But in the cliffside villages, you're given a person, so you have a house there, you're farming, whatever you do in that little farming community on that biodynamic farm. And then you watch out and live with a person who may be disabled or who has mental health issues. And then they're your person. So if they outlive you, another person will be given that dwelling that's healthy to continue the work with that person. Or sometimes they die, before you die. And it's interesting because I met a guy who at a Rudolf Steiner conference in Sacramento at the college down there. It's closed now, but and he lectured on the cliffside dwellings and also the one that they had. And it was pretty amazing. They said because a lot of these people couldn't live, in normal society and would have been kind of, if you're put into a home your whole life, that's incarceration. And
right.
Even if you can't operate in society, but what they do is they give them a life and they get to operate in the community at the capacity that they operate in. And he talked about how, he was on his second person, since he's been in the village. They farm, so all the food is produced on the land. So all the food that everybody eats comes from the land. Super healthy food for everybody. It's an enclosed system, so they don't have tons of people that are coming into that system a lot. They do have, quarterly meetings where they do biodynamic farming things, and the community is welcome to come in. But he talked about how the first guy that he had scared people because of just how his body twitched and how he would smile and how he would laugh, because he was a little bit disabled and he was a little bit mentally challenged, but he was a really, really good being. And so he would scare people sometimes by how he would start laughing and how his body would jerk around, but the people in the community knew him, you know what I mean? And accepted him for who he is. And then, they all have their own jobs. Everybody there has their own jobs.
So
and then the second woman that he had,
go ahead.
She was like a barely functioning autistic, but she loved to iron. So her favorite thing was to iron things, right? So basically she decided that she was going to iron all the clothes of all the people in the whole village. And so she would have to go out to each house and location. And so because she was at this level of autism, they like structure. They have their little patterns of everything they do, and they don't like to have their patterns off, anyway, ever.
Right.
And so he would talk about these crazy stories with her, she'd go out to people. So, they had people who did laundry, and then they'd leave the clean laundry in certain places, and then she would go get it, and then she would iron it, and then she would take it back, to where she got it, and then she'd get the next one, and then she'd do the ironing, and it was her job, and she thoroughly loved ironing.
That's
and so
adorable.
He said he was on a trip, and he had to call home, and he was talking to her, and she really couldn't figure out that he wasn't there, on site or property. And so she kept saying, well, I have one problem. And he would say, well, what's the problem? She goes, I can't find your clean laundry. It's not where you're supposed to put it. And I can't iron your clothes. And he's like, but I'm not there. I'm on a trip, and when I get back, I'll have lots of dirty laundry, and I'll make sure and wash it, and I'll put it there for you. And she was just totally upset. So they actually, I think, had to go take some of his clean clothing out of somewhere and put it in the basket.
Right.
So that she could iron it, while he was gone.
And keep the pattern going. Right.
The missing laundry was a problem.
But I love that they took her strength and gave her a function, making her feel functionable and feeling function. I mean, that does so much for our human worth and dignity, and just in making us feel like part of a community. I mean that is according to human scale. I mean, this person liked ironing, and I'll tell you what, I wouldn't mind living in a village with somebody that did ironing. Take it. I hate ironing.
Well, everybody had their job. Well, and the thing is they don't make money off these people.
Right.
So there is everybody participates. It's like a no money situation, right. Where everybody participates at the level that they need to participate. But what's really healthy about it is she has to leave the house and walk to wherever she needs to walk in the village.
Right. Instead of being a shut-in,
she's out in nature with people.
Yep.
She gets to go into each individual's houses. The houses are not locked because, people are not afraid, and there's nothing people are going to lose or afraid that's going to be stolen. Wow. And goes in and gets what she needs. And so everything is open access as well, right? So there's a lot of trust. And, it's just kind of, we really have to think, and, like Waldorf School comes from Steiner. For me, a lot of the people that are involved with Steiner are kind of culty. But I do really love a lot of Steiner's work. How to work with children, with the Waldorf, how their brain develops, over 12 years, how to help them to develop themselves, full scale, human scale, how to deal with cliffside villages and people who are challenged and disabled. And just food, nutrition and diet and soil and a lot of the principles of Steiner. I just really thoroughly enjoy and follow.
And that's Richard Steiner, right? That his name is Richard Steiner?
No, Rudolf Steiner.
Rudolf Steiner, okay.
Yeah, and he was poisoned supposedly in 1922. A lot of people didn't really like a lot of his thoughts, but he was a pretty out of the box guy. He was. There were a lot of people that came or were evolved into the planet during these time frames. That were mystic, that were highly educated, that were psychic. That had a lot of, answers. And so I've gone back and I'm reading this Anthroposophy in Everyday Life. The great thing about Rudolf Steiner is that his lectures and his writings and stuff like that are very short and to the point. Like, his books are not 600 pages long. And this one is Anthroposophy in Everyday Life, and it's super great because it talks about 4 areas of personal development that were extremely important in the, walking an anthroposophy type lifestyle. And the ones in this book that are presented are practical training in thought, overcoming nervousness, facing karma, and the 4 temptations. But it's a super short book. I think all of this stuff is delivered within like 90 pages.
Nice. I wrote it down. I keep a list of books, topics to research, and documentaries to watch. So I just wrote it down. Bringing things back to the weeds we were talking about, are you learning or finding out if there are any weeds that help with mental health issues?
Well, I mean, this is okay. So, if I was, helping people with mental health issues, the number one thing that people would have to navigate away from would be Wi-Fi, cellular stuff,
right?
Computers, cell phones, because it does change the cellular structure. These things do break down the cells, which cause inflammation. Within 15 minutes of being next to a smart meter, your cells start breaking down in your blood. So
within 15 minutes, you said?
Huh?
Within 15 minutes?
Yeah.
Wow.
In 15 minutes being around a smart meter, your red cells will start to break down, which is inflammatory blood disease, right?
Right, that brings us back to inflammation.
And when you have that, that's pretty serious stuff because your blood starts to thicken and it coagulates, and then you're not getting water. You could drink gallons of water, and when your red blood is inflamed, the cells collapse. They don't hold oxygen. They don't hold water, and you're not getting any nutrient traffic to your body. I don't really care how good your diet is. And I don't care how much water you're drinking. And so, because of the Wi-Fi and the microwave radiation does that to your cells like immediately. So getting away from technology could be really beneficial. The big thing I think is B vitamins and like especially B12. And they had this study that I read in from Poland, and they had this period. I don't know if it was like, I keep seeing 1939 or something, but I don't know if that was the right time period for this study. But they had this period where they had a whole bunch of people in Poland that were going into a coma, and they couldn't figure out why people were just slumping over into a coma. They couldn't find anything medically wrong with them. And so they started kind of experimenting on them with different kinds of nutritional injections, because, obviously they couldn't feed them nutritional food. And one of the things that started happening, they started giving them B12 injections. And immediately people were coming out of a coma. So they started doing these huge studies around B12 and finding out that people were B12 deficient in their diets, and that it could become so severe to your nervous system that it literally neurologically can shut your whole system down, shut your brain down. Because the B12 actually coats, your nerves. So, if you had a house and you had an electrical system in your house, and you didn't have coating along the electrical wires, what would happen when a charge went through them? It would spark, cause a fire, and burn your house down.
Right. That's a good metaphor or analogy, yeah.
So your nerves are like that. And so if the coating, the B coating, is not on them, and your brain is sending, or your organs are trying to send information to your brain through those passageways, number one, it's not getting to the brain, and they're firing, and basically, your house is burning down. Your brain, is not reacting to the information that's coming in, and it's not making it, and because the coding is not there. So the information, also the data, becomes something else than what the brain and the rest of the body, as they communicate back and forth, can understand. So B12 actually helps to code. Now, we have a lot of nutritional crap that I'm going to call pharma nutrition or pharma supplements. So, PHARMA, pharmaceutical supplements. And this is why a lot of people will have problems with different types of supplements, is because they're pharmaceutically crafted, which means that they're non-biological nutrient. So say, for example, people will start taking the more toxic types of magnesium to try to, help absorb the calcium, and also usually to take a poop, right? But a lot of those types of magnesiums are pH pharma made, and they're highly toxic to the body, and so people will get like major diarrhea as a result. There's vitamin C's out there that people take, 1,500 milligrams, and they have severe diarrhea. So these are toxic nutrients and toxic supplements made by the pharma industry.
Can I ask you about Deplin? Because you said that, and Deplin is marketed as a medical food, and it's being prescribed to people with depression that have also their labs show that they have like folate deficiency.
They have the what deficiency?
A folate, like folic acid, I guess, deficiency.
Oh, yeah, folate. Yeah, well, folate is, it actually assists in the development of the spine.
But, okay, so what I'm interested in, though, is, is the marketing of it. Deplin is a medical food. Have you ever heard that?
Well, we have all kinds of stuff like that. I mean, nowadays, because doctors can't prescribe painkillers and make all their money, now they're all coming out as nutritional experts, which blows my mind, because they're given a 4-page ditto sheet on diet and told basically, it's not going to help your clients. So a lot of them don't really have formal nutritional training, that they should be making their own medicines or their nutritional products.
Right.
In a lot of cases,
I think that's a concern, because
people.
Yeah, working with population that looks to psychotropic medications. I mean, this sounds amazing to me. I'm going in, and not only is my doctor treating my depression, but Deplin is also a medical food that's improving my nutrition. It's like killing two birds with one stone.
Yeah.
I don't buy it. I didn't trust it the second I learned about it.
Yeah. Well, the thing is like, okay, so if most B vitamins are bacterially derived, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then, you know, people have to kind of go out of the thinking box and say, well, where would these bacteria be found? And how if I'm a bacterial being or I have a bad bacteria that I've acquired, why do I have that? Because I'm not taking in a healthy bacteria, which would be a vitamin type B, right? So where are those bacteria found? Well, there was a report that came out of India that I read that they did. The Americans did some nutritional stuff in India, which we'll get back to. But the B vitamins are found in things like we don't eat, like bugs, and from bugs that have blood and they're just carriers of B vitamins and bacteria. But also bacteria is found, B vitamin bacteria is found on plants because they, have it under healthy conditions and healthy soil. They grow bacteria on themselves to protect themselves. And so sometimes bacteria are brought to them from, butterflies and bees and bacteria are exchanged. And so this is why it's important, and so many reasons why it's important to eat raw food. So many reasons why you should grow food in your own yard, try to keep it as clean as possible, and not, when you pick it to eat it, don't overwash it. Because the more that you wash it, the more you wash off the bacteria, and the more that you sterilize it. And you really need to eat it as raw and fresh as possible so that you can get those bacteria into your body. And those are biological bacteria. And those bacteria are B vitamins. And they will help you to fight off bad bacteria, foreign bacteria that will overpopulate you and take over. So, you can't really make bacteria or a nutritional food in a lab because it doesn't have enough data or information in it from the environment, right? It's not a community.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Grown exchange like it would be if you grew your own food.
Right.
That's why you should never, spray pesticides, herbicides in your environment at all, because this kills all of anything that, where the bacteria would be, healthy bacteria would be able to grow. I read a study that somebody did on just hand sanitizers and the type of antibiotic compounds that they use in them. And they said just from using that stuff on your hands can make your system so unbelievably sterile that you're susceptible to all kinds of radical bad bacteria.
Yes.
Which means that you're more susceptible to staph and strep infections.
Which is amazing. When I was doing medical outreach in Brazil, we were in an impoverished village in the state of Brasilia. Or no, it was outside of Brasilia. And the medical staff there just kept saying, "You Americans, like, they don't have infection control problems in their hospitals like we do, and they don't ever use hand sanitizer. They just use good old-fashioned soap, and the soap and the water cleanses the hands, and they use they bleach. They don't throw away things, instruments that have been used one time, and it's completely different."
Well, the people eat from, the marketplaces where the food has, a community imprint, bees and all these different, insects and all these, have landed on it, provided other bacteria, has helped with, proper bacteria, and, exchanges. And then they're also eating that. I mean, they eat a lot more healthy. I met this, I had a situation when I was living in Taos where the guy that I was working for, I ended up having to take him to the hospital, having been in the medical field for a long time, and he was having some problems, and I knew that it was probably his appendix that had blown or was getting ready to blow. So it took us, an hour drive to the hospital. But his doctor was from Brazil, and she wanted to be a surgeon, but there weren't like tons of surgical positions in Brazil. But she came to America and she specialized in colons and diverticulitis because she said, we sat and had coffee and talked, and she said that in, her country, they don't have diverticulitis. In a lot of countries in the world, they don't have diverticulitis.
Right.
In the Canada, the UK, and America, especially America, is the most prominent place for diverticulitis.
Mm-hmm.
Which is basically, your colon gets pockets of bread and cheese and, food that you shouldn't be eating. It sticks to the colon lining. A lot of the oils that people eat, like canola oil, that's, Monsanto's GMO oil that has pesticides and stuff in it.
Why do people in the hospital that are on, like, heavy power IV antibiotics usually end up with diverticulitis? Do you know?
Well, because they have these infections, in their colon already. And so you can't just get diverticulitis. Diverticulitis is something that you're getting from a lifetime of eating bad food that sticks to your colon lining and creates pockets and eventually eats through. So that's diverticulitis, is, it's really thin where the colon lining is because you've got this mass that's sitting on there. They say that, like people eat a lot of bad oils in their diet, and it actually starts to coat the colon. So the colon can't work like an accordion, you know what I mean? Because it's a pump, right? It's a pump. It contracts, right, to pump that poop out. The small intestines, contracts harshly so it can like squish out the juice from the food before it's sent down into the large colon, and that's where a lot of your nutrition comes from. But we eat a lot of these trans fat oils, and it actually starts to coat the colon, and then the colon can't contract anymore.
Well,
so you talked about what happens is that layer stays on there for a long period of time. I myself, when I was 28, did this massive colon cleanse, like this colon cleanse program. And I was shocked at, after about 3 months, what came out of my colon. And all of that oil and all of that stuff that had been stuck on my colon wall actually started coming out in long, stringy clumps.
May I ask what's involved in a colon cleanse program? Is it...
Well, they have a lot of really good ones. I mean, I think Colonex, mostly it's taking fiber and herbs, and it basically kills, parasites and lots of different stuff, but it's usually pretty heavy fiber. Let me see if I can find...
you hear a lot about, I don't know if it's trendy, but nowadays you hear people about going to spas to get colonics, and is that just trendy stuff?
Well, the thing is like, it's not going to clean, the layers, of stuff that's stuck to your colon wall. I mean, you have to get pretty extreme with it. So
Gotcha.
They do still sell Dr. Natura Colonix intestinal cleanse, and that's what I used to use a lot and take a lot of. And you could start with a home remedy, I think this is like $35. Colonex intestinal cleanse, Dr. Nutria website. But it goes in and actually starts to clean off all of that, material off the colon wall so that the colon can, like, start to work again. And you take it for, quite a period of time. I ended up taking it for about 3 months. It took about 3 months to actually, when I was around 28. And I've been pretty healthy my entire life. But we eat a lot of oil, fat, potato chips, corn chips, have tons of trans fat oils in them. And it doesn't matter if you don't eat it now. At some point in time, you ate it, and it's stuck.
Right.
It's stuck to your organs. It's stuck to your colon wall. It has already been there and been there for a while. So, but yeah, so Dr. Natura Colonex intestinal cleanser, awesome stuff. You could do like a home one. I had a woman that I used to go to that was a healthcare practitioner in my early 20s who is unbelievable. But she taught me to whip up, to periodically every 6 months do chlorophyll. So chlorophyll is like, the plant juice. It's green. You can buy it in a jar. And it actually has a lot of nutrient in it, sunlight type nutrient. So you can get chlorophyll, get yourself some pure aloe vera juice, and psyllium husk, which is really cheap to buy, and then Beno clay. And then what you do is you mix it all together and you drink it twice a day, in the morning and the night. Mind you, if you are using Beno clay goes in and absorbs everything, and it like scrubs and washes its way out, and it gets all the stuff congealed to it. So you have to drink a ton of water, otherwise you're going to be impacted. It's not going to come out, because you've got the psyllium too, which is going to expand as well and scrubby dub out. But you would just put like in some, I would do purified water, I would go to a water place and actually get purified water. And then you do 6 ounces of water. I would do 2 tablespoons of chlorophyll, 1 tablespoon of Beno clay, and 1 heaping tablespoon of psyllium, and also 2 tablespoons of aloe vera juice, and then just stir it up. And you need to chug it down as soon as possible, because the Beno clay and the psyllium will immediately start to swell up in the water, and you won't be able to drink it. So you can't just make it, let it sit on the counter. You come back in 10 minutes and it's like a solid mass.
Wow.
But it's super healing. And the Beno clay is really cool, because if you buy enough Beno clay, you can use it on your teeth.
Really?
It can actually help to pull out toxins in your teeth. It can actually help with, any kind of stuff that may be in your mouth that's not good, as a pulling agent and pulling out, infection, bad bacteria, heavy metals, that kind of stuff. And you can also use Beno clay. Is always good to put in a little container and put in your purse or something like that, because if you get like a bad bee sting, or you get like a rash or anything like that, you can take the Beno clay, just add a little bit of water to it, and then stick it on top of whatever you need it to actually pull out.
So even like a itchy bug bite or something?
Yeah, I mean, I even used it on where I've been out camping and I woke up and my eye was swollen, and it kind of had stuff coming out of it, and I just take the Beno clay, put water in it, and then put it over my eye for a little while so it could pull out whatever was going on.
So it's a good thing to have like apple cider vinegar, because it's got lots of practical applications, right?
It does.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah. But you could have like just a natural little medicinal kit of things like Beno clay, different kinds of things that you could use, maybe some different, flower remedy, tinctures, rescue remedies, so good for just about everything. Colloidal silver, you can just have like a little container that you have a few little things in that, so if you're wherever you're out and about, you can another really good thing to have in your little kit would be something I made this year at class, which is blackberry root. And that's from a blackberry bush. You harvest it in the springtime before the flowers, because once the blackberry bush starts to flower, it starts to push a lot of the nutrient and medicine that it has in its root up into the plant, right, in order for it to, basically have babies, which is its fruit. And so you can get blackberry root tincture, and it doesn't kill virus or parasites or anything like that, but it's so good to have because it will, if you have diarrhea, it will stop the diarrhea immediately. And you can take, so many drops every 15 minutes until it stops. So, for example, you have to get on an airplane, or you are on an airplane with a long flight, and you start getting, some ass blow. I mean, you can start taking that blackberry root and blocking that stuff up, at least till you can get to some place that you can deal with it, right?
Can I ask you a question with the plants, the blackberry root? I mean, is this the case with most plants, that the root is more nutrient dense than the flower or the fruit that...
Well, I mean, it depends on the type of year, and it depends on, say, for example, one thing that I've learned about plants is that what is below is not above. Where people have that whole spiritual thing, as it is above, so it is below. Well,
hermetics,
plants have taught me that's not true. That's not true at all. Because the root of the plant may have one function, and the top of the plant may have a completely other function. And if it's a biannual means that the plant does two things. So say, for example, a mullein is a biannual, right? It grows the first part of itself with leaves and stuff and a strong root. And then the next year, after winter, it starts to kind of digest the root a little bit so that it can push a stalk up so that it can grow flowers and seed. And then it dies, right? Then the plant is, had two functions and it's over with. And so I have found in some cases that the root usually delivers some pretty serious medicine. But if we go back to growing food, and we look at the food systems of what we would grow in the fall and the winter, and those are usually root vegetables. A lot of them have a tendency to be root vegetables because the liver naturally needs support. And root vegetables usually offer support to the liver. Because you're coming into fall, your body wants to detox from, the spring and summer, because it's moving into a slower system. Like if we look at ourselves, as a more of an organism, the organism is designed for evolution. So it means that we would be coming into a slower system coming into winter. And, in the past, we may have not had a lot of access to food. So the body is going to prepare to slow down, and kind of prepare for winter. So a lot of the root vegetables, which most people don't eat, are super important for that fall and winter process to actually help the liver and some of the other organs.
That is amazing.
And usually the root vegetables because they've grown for 6 months, have huge amounts of nutrient in them, right?
Wow.
So you have rutabaga, beets, turnips, parsnips. I mean, there's tons of different kinds of rooty vegetables.
I'm amazed at the rhythm of what, the balance. And this probably isn't a shock to you, but for me, I'm having like a eureka moment. Like, oh my gosh, these foods grow like exactly based on what you, the human, need at what time of the year. I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah. No, and I read this book from this scientist, and he said that, basically, food had to show up before, there was a type of, I believe that, I'm not a creationist, but I believe that we were created, humans. And I believe that this world was created, designed, biologically. But I believe that, the food did have to precede the evolution. So, for example, you couldn't have put a whole lot of humans here if you didn't have a lot of plant diversity in order for them to eat first. So, maybe they created, a plant diversity system that grew for, 15,000 years before they really started to develop like a human. And then if you had something that was like a cross-human or a different kind of being, you would have had to put that type of food on the planet. You know what I mean, as well. So
Is
I
this
believe
the
that
kind
the
of
food
stuff that
precedes, yeah, and this